So just a quick overview of who we are. For those of you who might not be aware, we were actually the company that built the first major crypto system for a big bank in the world, for Africa's largest bank in 2013, under a different brand called Switchless. I won't go into too much detail there, but suffice to say we spent about 2 years working with all the major banks around the world on all kinds of blockchain ideas, and we very quickly realized that almost all, if not all, use cases of a blockchain is bullshit. And really the best use case is a decentralized cryptocurrency, such as Bitcoin. We're in about 40 countries. We have over 2.5 million consumer customers, also some business customers. We're a team of 250, headquartered in London, but with big offices all over Africa, Southeast Asia, and Europe. And the team will probably double this year in the next 6 months. So if you're also looking for a role to work for the company, let us know. And we're backed by some really good investors. Hopefully Naspers, you all know by now. If you don't, in a couple of weeks, they will list on Amsterdam and be the biggest consumer tech company in Europe. And then Balderton Capital out of London, among some others. So just quickly, at Luno, we think a lot about how people are going to be using money in the future. And obviously, I'm assuming with you sitting here, I'm already preaching to the converted a little bit, so I don't have to explain why we think cryptocurrency is kind of interesting. But I do think, coming from the London fintech scene, there's a lot of things that we all there talk about, whether you're a fintech company, a regulator, a bank, a challenger bank. We all talk about making money cheaper, faster, more interoperable. And I think it's important, when you look at history, that it's very unlikely in our view that when we build this next generation of money in the next 10 or 20 years, that it's going to be the existing financial system that's just going to kind of reinvent itself and then be a little bit better. It's quite unlikely that will happen. And essentially, that's what a lot of consumer fintech companies do. They make a nice app, and it's a bit more transparent, and they have some cool marketing, and now they, challenging the banks. But like a challenger bank founder said to me a while back when I said to them, are you really trying to challenge the banks, or are you trying to sell your company to a bank? He just smiled and he said, let's see what happens. And I think that says a lot. So we think cryptocurrencies, the fact that they're decentralized and that they're so global and that they can start with bottom-up roots is a really important factor in terms of driving adoption. And how do we think this adoption will happen? Because, again, we could probably speak for hours about this, but I just want to give a very simple overview, which is very important, I think, for everyone to understand. It's almost, we think of it almost as like 3 layers. You can think over the next 10 or 20 years, these are the 3 layers that are going to be built. They're not completely discrete, but these are the predominant things that will happen in these layers. The first is the time that we're in now is like the asset layer. This is where a lot of people think about cryptocurrency as an investment, they speculate on it and so on. And the problem really that people are trying to solve here, or should be solving, is just to make it easy to buy your first Bitcoin. It's actually astounding if you think how hard it is still to get Bitcoin. And most of you maybe have crypto or Ethereum or so on. But if you walk to any random restaurant in a city in Europe and you say, please go and buy your first cryptocurrency, people they don't know Luno or Coinbase or any other companies. They wouldn't even know, do I go to the 7-Eleven, do I go to my bank? Then they have to get KYC'd by it and so on. So it's a problem that hasn't really been solved. And this is where a lot of our energy are going into. Doesn't mean that people aren't using it for transactions. They are, but it's small. Let's say 5 to 10%, especially in the markets we operate in. People use it a little bit for remittances, e-commerce, and so on. But once you have a critical mass of that, then you'll go into a phase where we will see people using it a lot more. And a good analogy I'd like to give, a real-life example, is a couple of years ago, we worked with a big media company, and we built a thing to go through paywalls. That very easily, if you go to get to a new site, you just tap on it and it'll open whatever crypto wallet you have on your phone, and you just tap again and you're through. So it's very frictionless. They loved it. They said, we want to put it on our website. How many users do you have? 10,000. They said, come back when you have 500,000 users. Now we have 2.5 million users. But the interesting thing is, very few of those 2.5 million users bought Bitcoin or Ethereum because they thought they are going to use it on a paywall. 90% of them bought it because they wanted to invest, or maybe they were a bit greedy. But guess what? When that thing pops up, if it's so easy, some people are going to click on it. Not everyone, maybe 0.1%, but that's how it starts. So you need this critical mass of asset layers for the next one to happen. And then only after that, we'll see what a lot of people are talking about when they did ICOs, and talking about this decentralized future, where it's not just financial use cases. And I think it's important to realize that will probably only happen in 5 to 10 years' time, because a lot of the things people are building, you need a critical mass of people to be using crypto already to use those services in turn. And we learned our lesson the hard way building things for banks in 2013, because we were about 7 years too early, And we believe a lot of the ICOs and a lot of the cool stuff people are trying to buy is about 7 years too early. A couple of quick notes just on this, which I think is very important, especially if you're thinking from an investor side of it or building a company side of it. Each phase builds upon the next. And so often you need the one for the other one to happen. When we started, I didn't want people to buy Bitcoin because they wanted to get rich. I want people to use it. But I realized later they need to go through that phase. It's a means to an end. The other important thing is who owns each phase will own the next. So often when I speak to the press or investors, they go, well, we want to invest in companies where people are actually using it, not where it's an asset, and once people start using it, we'll invest in those companies. Well, guess what? We are those companies. If you already have your value stored with someone, you don't have your money in one bank and then you move it to another bank to go and spend it. Maybe a little bit if you use some payment card, but not at scale. So it's important to know that the companies that own the asset phase are also going to own the use phase and are more likely to own the decentralized phase as well, where we will become almost like an identity provider in the cryptocurrency, the broader cryptocurrency or decentralization space. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, timing every phase is incredibly important. A lot of people companies are building phase 2 and phase 3 products. They're amazing products. It's the right idea. It's 5 or 7 years too early. The boring stuff, make it easy to buy crypto and store it safely. Sounds boring, it's not as cool, but that's where all the action is and really what is needed in the market right now. So very quickly, our vision is to upgrade the world to a better financial system. And how are we doing this? We've essentially taken that platform we built for the bank in 2013, and we started building products and services on top of it. But this is really what we started building. So we build local on-ramps, so make it easy for people to convert fiat to crypto, local liquidity pools, custody, compliance, licenses in some countries, and customer support. All of this is a platform that we're building that people are currently using across the world. And on top of this platform, well, maybe just to mention, it's available in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Europe. We're the largest player in Africa. First or second in Southeast Asia. By the end of the year, we'll definitely be the largest. And in Europe, we recently launched as well. And so it's available across all of that. And so our products is we have a consumer wallet, which that's those 2.5 million people use to just buy and sell crypto, use it, send it, and so on. We also operate exchanges to provide liquidity for those wallets. And all those exchange liquidity pools are localized, and we control them. And only our wallet at the moment has access to them, but we are starting to give access to some other companies. And I say they're business coming soon, but it's actually already been happening for a few months. So about 3 to 4% of our revenue is already businesses using this. This is some remittance companies. Ironically, some of the banks that we spoke to 5 or 6 years ago are starting to integrate our APIs, other fintech companies, and so on. So that's a really, really big part of the business. And all of these things actually have massive synergies with each other, because the more the businesses use it, the more liquidity gets created, the cheaper it becomes for the consumers. All of these things create very big barriers to entry as well. The other thing just to mention, as I kind of alluded to earlier, this platform is really important because what it does is it allows us to build a competitive advantage throughout all these phases, both the asset, the use, and the decentralization phase. It's not just particularly relevant for one of them. So just in a nutshell, what are we really building? People say, oh, are you a wallet? Are you an exchange? No. We are building trust and distribution in the markets that matter. The markets that matter, predominantly emerging markets, but you need a footprint in Europe as well because a lot of the use cases need that. And the trust and distribution, if you are a consumer or business in any country and you want to do something with crypto, then you do it through us. We have either the licenses or the regulatory relationships. We have the compliance and all those things that I mentioned that the platform has. Just to wrap that up, in 2019, a couple of exciting things coming over the next few weeks and months. If you're already a Luno user, you'll see a completely new updated mobile experience from next week on. A couple of big business partnerships being announced. We're launching in 10 African countries. We've already soft launched one. So keep your eyes. If you haven't downloaded the app, download the app. Have a look at what we do. And you're going to see a lot of exciting things. And thanks for all of your support up to now. Thank you.